local communities, companies, and agencies here in the Bay Area with a focus on Santa Clara and San Mateo counties. We have a wide variety of programming that varies from electrification, food sustainability, workplace sustainability, and education. Let's see. So it looks like no one put anything in the chat box. No pressure if you're feeling shy. If you don't want to share, just think about what your favorite meal is. I'm going to ask another question. We couldn't get the polling feature to work. So if you could put in the chat box whether or not you, sorry, I just lost my notes. If you can indicate whether you think food plays a significant role in climate change, maybe you think it plays a small role, a big role, a huge role, let me know. So with Acterra, our programming kind of falls under two core categories. We have beneficial electrification and healthy plate, healthy planet. Beneficial electrification moves us away from fossil fuels in our vehicles and buildings, while healthy plate moves us towards a plant-forward diet and less food waste. And those two things, a plant-forward diet and food waste reduction, are the two primary topics for my talk today. Okay, let's see what people said. My dad's clam spaghetti, very specific, but I like it. It sounds good. Burrito, I'm gonna have to agree with you, Emily. Burritos are my favorite. Tacos, can't go wrong. Sushi, avocado toast, and smoothie bowls. You guys are making me really hungry. I have not had lunch yet. Okay, and anything with curry, definitely. Cool. Well, we'll come back to that in a little bit. So let's talk about food. From a global perspective, about a quarter of global emissions come from food alone. So that's about 26% of greenhouse gas emissions are coming from food. But from a more localized perspective, let's kind of hone in on the San Francisco Bay Area. So a lot of people are aware that a large part of their carbon footprint comes from driving a gas-powered car. And then another big part of that is from heating and powering their home. Those are represented in these first two bars here on my slide. So the transportation, which is about 33%, and then housing, which is about 14%. Looks like my mouse is frozen. There we go. But many people are surprised to learn that their food footprint may be comparable to or even greater than the footprint from fueling their gas-powered car or from their home alone. So food is shown here in the third bar at 19%. And if you're kind of curious about what your own carbon footprint footprint is, there's great calculators out there, and all you have to do is a quick Google search and you can find some. Again, this is just kind of that average for San Francisco Bay Area. But what this indicates is that the average household contributes nearly 10 metric tons of CO2 equivalents. Now, CO2 equivalents, what does that mean? That's a unit that converts the impact of different kinds of greenhouse gases like methane and nitrous oxide to the equivalent amount of carbon dioxide. And this is just from food. If you're more of a visual learner, hopefully this will help. So again, nearly 10 metric tons of CO2 equivalent greenhouse gases come from food. This is a way to visualize it. So this is 1 metric ton. So imagine 10 times this per year, just from what is on our plate. So I really want to dive into food waste first, and then I'll talk about plant-forward eating from there. So food waste is a big contributor in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. And a fact that really stood out to me is that 40% of our food in the United States is wasted somewhere along the chain from farm to fork. So from the production side to your plate. And the residential sector, so not commercial like restaurants, is the largest source of food waste overall. And it has the largest greenhouse gas footprint given the added energy required to get food from the farm to your home onto your plate. Now this image right here on my slide, this shows the average amount of food wasted by a family of 4 in just 1 month. And for many people, that food waste is not even composted. It goes to the landfill where it decomposes, and then it slowly leaches methane into the atmosphere. And now the problem with that is that methane is the most powerful greenhouse gas with about 86 times the potency of CO2 when it comes to climate change. And of course, this waste is doubly disgusting and distressing when 1 in 4 people in the Bay Area do not even have enough to eat. Let's kind of talk about that a little bit more. So wasted food could feed hungry people. In the United States, more than 50% of the produce left behind on farms in 2019 was actually edible. That's enough fruits and vegetables to theoretically provide each food insecure American with about 4 servings per day. And globally, 1.3 billion tons of food are wasted each year. That's so much food, 4 times the amount needed to feed the more than 800 million who are malnourished right now. And in 2019, close to 750 million, nearly 1 in 10 people in the world, were exposed to severe levels of food insecurity. So before I get into the solutions and some things that you guys can do, I want to go over really quickly this food recovery hierarchy by the EPA. So at the very top of this upside down triangle are the most preferred methods, and then at the very bottom are the least preferred. So the most preferred would be source reduction. So reduce the amount of surplus food that's created in the first place. And then we want to try to recover and donate any food that we can to food banks, soup kitchens, and shelters. Then from there, feed animals, normally animal ag, so we can divert the food scraps and put it in their feed. There's some industrial uses where you can use the food scraps to create energy. And then we want to compost to create a nutrient-rich soil amendment. And then the least preferred option is the landfill or incineration, because again, as that food waste decomposes in the landfill, it leaches methane. So what can you guys do in terms of food waste? Now, some of you guys may be involved in the cooking at home or grocery shopping. You may go with your family, your parents or legal guardians, whoever it may be. Some of you may not be as involved. And I really want to encourage that if you're not as involved, this is a great time to start tagging along with them and helping them with the shopping and what should be made and maybe what shouldn't be made. So we want to suggest that you reduce waste with smarter shopping. So when you do go to the grocery store with whoever it is that's buying groceries for your house, buy only what you need and really try not to shop when you're hungry. I'm such a foodie. I love to eat all the time. I'm also always hungry, and I tend to go to the grocery store when I'm hungry. And the problem with that is once I'm hungry, everything looks good and I buy all this excess food I don't need. I probably don't need 3 cartons of ice cream, but it just, it's super appealing to me. And then another suggestion we have, a simple thing to do is just make a list before you go to the store and stick to it. So what I would recommend you do is meal prep. So think about like 3 to 5 meals that you would love to eat that week, whether it's, burritos, tacos, your parents' clam spaghetti, whatever it may be. Think about those 3 to 5 meals and figure out what those recipes are and what the ingredients are before you go to the store. And then when you go to the store, only buy what is needed for those meals. This can help you save food because you're not buying excess stuff that you may not end up using in the first place. It saves you time and it also saves you money. Now, another very simple solution to do within your home is just to reduce your waste with smarter storage. So a lot of times this kind of gets overlooked and we don't really spend the time researching proper ways to store food within our house. So you want to wash and cut veggies and store them in containers in your fridge, right? We'll check regularly to remove any aging produce before it spoils the rest. A really common practice is just to label leftovers and consume. So maybe you guys went to, I don't know, your favorite pizza parlor or something like that, and you have leftover pizza in the fridge, and a week goes by and you're kind of staring at it and you're like, I can't remember what day that was. If you have that date on there, at least you have some sort of indicator. Any sort of leftovers generally lasts 3 to 4 days, sometimes 7 days, depending on what it was. Or if you want to freeze it, it can last 6 to 12 months in the freezer. And what I would like to do is go through 3 categories. So we'll talk about proper ways to store a fruit, a vegetable, and a protein. So for those of you here, how many of you like avocado? Raise your hand. Well, actually, most people's cameras are off. Well, most of us like avocado, right? It's pretty delicious. It goes on anything. An avocado, though, can be kind of tricky in terms of getting it ripe and when to use it at the right moment. So if you have an avocado, it's generally ripe. When you have an avocado that is ripe, it's freshest for 2 to 5 days once it's in the refrigerator. And the optimal storage would be to store it on the counter until it's ripe. And then you want to refrigerate it once you have cut it. So you can place it in a closed paper bag to accelerate the ripening, or do what I do. I add it to a fruit bowl with bananas and apples, and that helps speed up the ripening process. What you don't want to do is refrigerate it before it's ripe, because that kind of hinders the ripening process and slows it down. And if you ever open an avocado or you look at an old one that you cut a couple days ago and there's some browning, you can eat the brown part of the avocado, but sometimes it's kind of bitter. You may not want that. All you have to do is just scrape off that brown part and eat the green part underneath. And a way to kind of help maintain the color and preserve it is just to put some acidic juice. So if you have a lemon or lime juice, just squirt some on top of the avocado, and that will help it a little bit longer. But what happens, this is like everyone's worst nightmare, if you cut it and it isn't ripe, right? Like you're about to eat a burrito and throw some avocado in there, and you realize your avocado is really hard. Again, sprinkle some of that acidic juice, like I mentioned earlier, on top, and then close the two halves that you cut as if you never cut it. So make sure you keep that pit in there too, intact. Close it, put it in the refrigerator, and then it will start ripening. Now, an onion, this is a common vegetable that's used in so many ingredients. Onions are normally fresh when whole for several months, or when you cut them, they're fresh for about 7 days. Try to store them in cool, dark, dry areas that are well ventilated. You do not want to store them in like a plastic wrap, for instance, because that traps moisture, and dampness to an onion helps spoil faster or mold faster. If you have a moldy onion next to other onions, try to remove it immediately, because it will affect the nearby onions. And a neat little thing I learned this week, I've been making this mistake now for years, is that you don't want to store onions near potatoes, because they will cause potatoes to sprout. So if you have an already used onion, put it in an airtight container in the fridge with the peel left on. So take that peel off when you're ready to use it. And if you have an onion that has green sprouts on top, I just had one yesterday that did, it's still safe to eat. You can eat those green sprouts as if it like were a green onion. You don't have to, but you can eat it. If you don't want to, just try to compost it. And if any layers are bruised, just simply peel them off. And a really fun thing you can do with onions, I'm working on this right now, is I'm collecting the skins from yellow onions. And I'm going to be boiling those to create a dye. And I'm making some clothing, and I'm going to dye the clothing with that. And it kind of makes like a copperish orange color. And then for protein, let's talk about tofu. That's normally fresh for about 10 days. You can refrigerate it in the original package and it will last much longer if it's not opened. But once it's open, it's generally good for 10 days. Try to keep it submerged in water in an airtight container and change out water daily if you can. You and your family can freeze the tofu if you want, and that kind of helps draw out the moisture, and the tofu will become a little bit more meatier and dense. And if you want to marinate it, just drain all the excess water, pour the marinade in, and then place it in your fridge or refrigerator. Now, oftentimes people buy like potatoes or carrots, and before they eat them, they want to peel all the skin off, because maybe it looks imperfect. It's spotted. It might look like there's dirt on it, for instance. But these peels are totally nutritious and delicious. There's nothing wrong with eating them. Just make sure you give them a good scrub and wash before you do cook them or eat them raw, if it's a carrot, for instance. And stale bread. Sometimes we just can't get through our bread in time and it starts to get hard and stale. Don't throw it away. There's so many uses for that. You can make French toast, for instance. You could make like garlicky breadcrumbs to put in a salad. Sometimes breadcrumbs are even good sprinkled on top of a pizza. You can get creative. Or whoever's cooking in your house, if they have a lot of leftover vegetable scraps, maybe they did peel potatoes, for instance, keep those peels, collect them, and you can make like a veggie stock with them. Or if you have like any overripe fruit, sometimes my blueberries get like really wrinkly because I haven't eaten them in time. I just toss them in a smoothie and they're good to go. And then another easy solution is just try to put less on your plate. So use a smaller plate or just put less on it in general. If you're out to eat, maybe put half of your meal in a reusable container and save it for the next day. So we really want to try to reduce our portion sizes. I even have a friend, I want to say she's like in her mid 40s and she still orders from the kids menus at restaurants. And that's just because she can't or doesn't want to eat, these huge portions that most restaurants serve here. So she's really trying to minimize the portions on her plate. So she just orders from the kids menu. And the reason why this is important is because 70% of surplus in food service comes from consumers not eating everything they're served. So I know I threw a lot at you guys. I want to take just a really quick break, and in the chat box, if you could maybe type in some solutions to prevent food waste. So think about the food in your house, maybe even walk to your kitchen really quick and look around and see if you could get creative and think of a solution. We'll give you guys like 2 minutes for that. Oh, that's a good one by Dory. Encouraging your family to let each other know what food needs to be used. Definitely. Fruits, vegetables, leftovers before making, opening, or ordering something. That's a big one. Sometimes leftovers get pushed in the back of the fridge and then no one sees them anymore. I can compost the food waste in my grandma's garden. That's perfect as well. Great. Well, as you guys are typing those, I'll continue. So let's talk about diets now. So plant-forward eating and what exactly plant-forward eating is. If you're comfortable sharing, go ahead and type your current diet in the chat box. Are you a meat lover? Are you an omnivore? Are you a flexitarian, a pescatarian, vegetarian, a vegan? Maybe you're not sure, and that's totally fine as well. So again, what is your current diet? Is it a meat lover, an omnivore, a flexitarian, pescatarian, vegan, or a vegetarian? Oh, and I see someone put another answer in. My family saves all our vegetable scraps and freezes them, and we make stock once a month. I bet that is so good. Okay, I see we have some omnivores here, a few vegetarians, a vegan, flexitarian, another vegan. Okay, cool. So we have a pretty diverse bunch here. All right, so yeah, I just talked a little bit about food waste, but you may be wondering why we're encouraging people to adopt a plant-forward diet and what that means. So a plant-forward diet is one that really emphasizes and celebrates plant-based foods, but you're not limited to them. So it involves making plants more of the centerpiece of your meal and using meat and dairy maybe as an accent or not at all. So I'm sure you guys are aware it's healthier for you as an individual to eat more fruits, vegetables, legumes, and whole grains, but it's also healthier for the planet. Now, what in terms of food types, what do you guys think creates the most greenhouse gas emissions? Do you guys think it's beef? Would it be poultry, pork, legumes, potatoes, or milk? What food type do you think creates the most greenhouse gas emissions? Let's find out. People are saying beef, 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 right? Beef all around. You guys are smart. Yeah. So this chart that I'm showing right now shows that greenhouse gas emissions compared across different foods, it varies quite a bit, right? So everything to the left of the vertical blue line is animal-based, and then everything to the right is plant-based. So all the animal-based foods have a much higher footprint than plant-based foods. As you guys guessed, beef, right? Cheese, milk, and other dairy products, chicken, eggs, pork, and seafood. They're all really carbon intensive. There's also a lot of other problems associated with the meat and the dairy industry as well. So in these kind of industries, at least with factory farming, there's a lot of pollution of land and water, excess water consumption, land use, deforestation, and of course, most importantly, the mistreatment of workers and the animals themselves. So you can see on this that beef comes in far above everything else. So a serving of beef has about 60 times the carbon footprint of a serving of beans, 60 times. And lamb, which wasn't reflected in this study, is even higher than beef. So beef, it's not what's for dinner. So why is it so high for beef and lamb? Some of you may know this already, some of you may not, but the reason for this is because these animals are ruminants. And what's a ruminant? Well, that's a mammal that have extra compartments in their stomach. What they do is they collect food there in that extra compartment in their stomach, and it sits there and it ferments while it's digesting. And with the help of microbes and this fermentation process, methane gas gets created, and these cows get really gassy. And the gas is then normally released through their burps. And as I mentioned earlier, methane is really, really potent greenhouse gas. So our food system, it's broken, there's full of inequity, and our planet is definitely in a crisis. I think no one denies that now at this point. We have no time to wait, and we really, really want to urge you guys to think about maybe some dietary changes that you can make that are healthier for you and for our planet. Now, as I noticed, there's a lot of omnivores here in this room as well. Maybe you're willing to consume a little less meat, but you don't want to give it up entirely. That's fine. Maybe try to find a farm here in the Bay Area, or encourage your parents to buy meat from a farm here in the Bay Area that focuses on regenerative agriculture. Now, I'm not an expert on this subject matter, so I'm not going to go too into regenerative ag, but just I want to talk about it very quickly. It's a practice of promoting soil health by restoring the soil's organic carbon. So soil stores carbon and it acts as like a carbon sink. So it brings in the carbon from the atmosphere and it stores it underground. And with the overgrazing and our current farming practices where we only grow like one type, right, monoculture, the world's soils are getting eroded and they're degrading, and the fertility of the land isn't quite what it used to be. But there's these types of regenerative agricultural practices that kind of help restore that. And it varies. So some farmers really emphasize cover crops, maybe no tilling of the land, crop rotations, and livestock grazing. So a type of regenerative ag with livestock grazing would be cattle are moving frequently throughout the land, and they're consuming the vegetation in a manner in which it's helping to increase the vegetation growth and not completely kill it. And then with this vegetation growth, it intakes the carbon from the atmosphere, and it helps sequester the carbon. I'm going to move on now and kind of talk about our bodies a little bit. So will I get enough protein? I don't eat any animal-based products whatsoever. And this is the most common question I get from everyone. Will I get enough protein? What do you eat? You must eat leaves from a tree. You're crazy, right? No, that's not the case. So definitely can get enough protein. Plants are filled with protein, and that's how animals get it in the first place, the type of animals that we eat. So as long as you eat an adequate number of calories and try to limit processed foods, you'll get plenty of protein and you generally don't have to worry. It's recommended that about 10% of your calories come from protein. So 51 grams a day is the recommended amount of an average 140-pound adult or young adult even. If you choose to eat only plants, a 2,000 calorie diet of only plants supplies you with about 70 grams of protein. That's more than enough. And if your body consumes too much protein, it just simply urinates it out. Now, most of us are getting too much to begin with. So again, I really want to stress, you probably do not need to worry about your protein intake. Just make sure you're eating a well-balanced and nutritious foods. And the only thing you probably would be missing if you went like full vegan or even sometimes vegetarian would be B12, which is a vitamin that you're most likely going to be lacking, but it's easy to find supplements for that. So it's not too much of a hindrance at all. And then you may be wondering, like, bone density, iron, nutrient requirements. So bone density, it's really important at a younger age. It's really determined by what you're eating at a younger age. So try to consume sources of calcium, and you want vitamin D. The good thing is there's plenty of plant-based foods that is rich in iron, like leafy greens, spinach, for instance, chard, tofu, tahini, almonds, orange juice. And in terms of vitamin D, there's foods that are fortified with it, but you can even just go outside for 15 minutes a day to get some sunlight on your hands and your face. In terms of iron, foods that are higher in iron include tofu, spinach, black-eyed peas, pinto beans, potatoes, cashews, even watermelon. If you're a female athlete, you may want to look into iron supplements as well. I just want to really emphasize, I'm not a doctor. So if you have any specific questions about this, please check in with your personal doctor to get their recommendations. So let's say you're going to the grocery store, you're helping your parents shop, and you start seeing all these logos on packages and you have no idea what they mean. Are they good? Which one should I be looking for? Why do they matter? I want to kind of briefly go over that. So I'm going to start with the one on the far left. This is the Fair Trade certification. Now, there's my cursor. So they certify produce, cooking and baking products, and clothing. And they like to certify companies that are being really responsible and meet their standards in terms of safe working conditions, environmental protection, sustainable livelihoods, and community development. And then we'll go to the next one, the certified vegan. This one's really nice because if you don't want to waste time looking at like an ingredient list of a product, sometimes that can take forever, right? They're really long. If they have this certified vegan logo, you know automatically that it doesn't contain any animal products or byproducts. Now we'll go into the next one. Again, if say your family just really loves to eat meat and whoops, you guys may go meatless Monday, but for the rest of the week, you're going to be eating meat. Try to buy meat that's certified humane. They look at the animal's home, the enclosure, diet, handling and transportation, the care specific to that animal and the industry itself. And if the producer meets the standards, they receive the certified humane label. GMO stands for genetically modified organism. GMO products generally correlate to the use of herbicides and pesticides. Now, why is that? That's because they're creating genetically modified organisms that resist herbicides or pesticides. So then the farmer can use more herbicides or pesticides and not worry about damaging the product that they're growing. Now, the problem with that is with the more use of herbicides and pesticides, generally there's going to be more damage to the nearby ecosystems, and as well as emergence of superweeds and superbugs, which require more enhanced poisons to kill them off. So it's kind of like this endless cycle. On some food products, you'll see the certified B Corp logo, and they really take into consideration what that company's business model is and how it impacts their workers, the community, the environment, and customers. The Rainforest Alliance certified, this one's really common. I'm sure you've seen it at some point. If not, keep an eye out for it. There's a lot of products with it. They like to look at forest management and protection, how the land is managed, how the company or the farmer, really looks into climate and human rights and livelihoods, not just human livelihoods, but ecosystem health as well. Orangutan Alliance, they like to certify manufacturers, brands, and retailers that aren't using any palm oil or derivatives of it, at least non-sustainable palm oil. And then organic, I'm sure you've heard that word by now. Organic producers use natural processes and materials when developing farm systems. And they like to look at, soil, crop, and livestock nutrition, pest and weed management, production goals, and the conservation of biodiversity near them. All right, so thank you guys for hanging in there. Just, I'm gonna try to go through this part a little bit quicker, but I wanna ask you guys, have you tried any plant-based milks before? And if so, which ones? If you could type your answer in the chat box, that would be great. If you're not sure what a plant-based milk is, there's so many variations. We have soy milk, flax milk, cashew milk, hemp milk, rice milk, coconut milk, pistachio milk, sesame milk, almond milk, oat milk. I'm probably missing some of them. There's so many. Let's see. Okay, I've tried soy, oat, and almond, soy and coconut, coconut, soy, and oat, oat, soy, almond. All right, so a lot of the same answers. Great. Seems like you guys have experienced it. So one of the easiest places in terms of going plant forward starts with milk. Just switching from cow's milk to plant-based milk. It's a really good idea. There's so many choices out there that really help you kind of, find, sorry, let me rephrase that. With so many choices out there, it helps you, have options in the sense of finding one that meets your needs in terms of taste and like consistency. I personally love oat milk. That's one of my favorites because it's really creamy. And I don't know, I just think it has a nice consistency to it. But as you guys highlighted, some people love almond, soy, macadamia nut. They're all great. When you're at the store, these are some of the common brands that you'll most likely see. Oatly is one of the famous oat milk brands. Ripple is I think it's like a pea protein, if I remember correctly, or it comes from peas. Rice Stream is from rice. We have So Delicious coconut milk, Good Karma flax milk. And a neat thing with these plant-based milks too is a lot of them are fortified with nutrients and vitamins. So again, if you're worried about your protein intake, maybe get this Good Karma flax milk because it's fortified with protein. There's some that are fortified with like vitamin D, vitamin A, omega-3s, all these vitamins and nutrients that you may need. And then we want to encourage you guys to try to eat less meat. So moving again meat to the side of your plate or off your plate, or just entirely for full days or some of your meals is a really good thing in terms of reducing your greenhouse gas footprint. And many people get started with just like a meatless Monday, for instance, or they try being plant-based before 6 p.m. every day. So maybe this is a kind of challenge that like you and your family or whoever you live with can try. So eating one less serving of beef each Monday for 1 year saves about 348 miles worth of emissions. And this one's even crazier. So producing just one typical 4th pound of a beef burger uses about 10 bathtubs full of water. So it's quite a bit. And you're probably wondering what these pictures are indicating. So these little cars at the bottom, they represent greenhouse gas emissions and the differences between substitutions. So this picture in the middle is like an eggplant bacon. In terms of greenhouse gas emissions, it uses about half of a car. While if you're using real bacon, it's about 3.5. And then on the far right side, we have what I think is probably like a pulled pork. The mushroom alternative uses only like a quarter of a car, while using actual pork is about 7 cars. And this sandwich right here, with chickpeas, you're using about half a car, and with lamb, it's significantly higher. And if you're going to start grocery shopping with whoever's in your house, these are some brands you can keep an eye out for. All of these, for the most part, are like plant-based meat brands, except just this one right here. They focus on eggs, so that actually shouldn't be here. But some common brands that I see, at least here in my area, would be like Gardein. They have a really good like plant-based chicken nugget. Amy's is pretty common. You may have heard of Beyond Meat. They're getting really popular now. Field Roast, they make a sausage. Excuse me. Tofurkey, Light Life. Yeah, depending on what store you go to, I'm sure you'll see some of these. And in case you're wondering, plant-based meat production uses about 99% less water, up to 95% less land, and generates up to 90% fewer harmful emissions than regular beef burgers. And then we all eat with our eyes, so I wanted to include some pictures of what these meats look like. On the far right, we have Daring Foods, which is a plant-based chicken company. In the bottom center, we have the Beyond Meat bratwurst sausage. Super good. I've put that in like a pretzel bun before. Oh, I love it. I'm starting to get more and more hungry as I go through this presentation. We have Impossible Foods in the center at the top. They're pretty well known at this point. They're even in Burger King. You can get like an Impossible Whopper. And then on the far left, we have Good Catch, which is a plant-based tuna. Now, if you love cheese, don't worry. There's plenty of plant-based cheeses, and there's always new brands popping up left and right. There's a lot of updates to the recipes of older brands that have been around for a while as well. So give them a try, find one that kind of meets your needs and satiates your taste buds. In the center, we have a feta cheese by BioLife. On the far right, we have Field Roast, that company I brought up earlier. Their cheese, the chow slices, which is great for like sandwiches. And then on the far left, we have a Bay Area-based brand called Miyoko's Creamery. And they do kind of like these fancier cheese wheels. And if you're curious, you know, what are these normally made out of? It kind of varies depending on which company you're talking about. But a lot of times they use nuts like cashews, different types of oils, starches. Sometimes they'll use tofu in them. Sometimes it's like a miso. It just really varies from brand to brand. And if you love eggs, don't worry. There's plenty of alternatives out there as well. I just made a, what was it? It was a plant-based brownie like a couple weeks ago. And instead of eggs, I used a mixture of applesauce, which you see right here in the right-hand corner, and chia seeds. That acted as like a binder, like what eggs normally would do in baking. And it came out pretty good. At the very top here, we have that brand Just Eggs that I mentioned. They're fairly new, but they're getting really popular. You can make scrambled eggs, omelets, you can use it for baking. And what's really neat about this brand is that their two primary ingredients are mung beans and turmeric. And then in the far left, we have an egg replacer made by Bob's Red Mill, which uses like different flours and starches and stuff. So I know at the beginning of my presentation, I was asking you guys what your favorite meal is. Now I want you guys to type in the chat box and answer in terms of this. So think about what plant-based option you could use as a substitute for your favorite meal. So some of you said like you like burritos. Well, maybe the burritos you typically get have carne asada or carnitas or chicken. What's a substitute that you would be willing to try that makes it plant-based? Or for the person that likes spaghetti and clams, what's an alternative you would be willing to try instead of the clams? So please type your answer in the chat box. I'm really excited to see what you guys come up with, get creative. And while you're doing that, I'm just gonna quickly go over my last few slides. So Healthy Plate, our program, Healthy Plate, Healthy Planet. We do film screenings, panel discussions. We have an online community. We do food challenges, cooking demos. If you and your family maybe want to join a cooking demo to learn how to make like plant-based tacos, please feel free to sign up, acterra.org/healthyplate. For those of you that do have Facebook, we have a online community. Just make sure you get permission to join beforehand, where we share like recipes, local restaurant recommendations, kitchen tips, food waste tips, and stuff like that. What I'm really excited to mention is for the month of May, we have a Meatless May challenge. I really strongly recommend that you guys sign up for this and your family as well, or whoever you're living with in your house. I'll even post the link in the chat box. I'll talk about it a little bit more. Hang on one second. Okay, so we all have a part to play, right, in shaping a sustainable future. And we think one of the easiest ways to start making a change is through your diet and following a diet that's healthier for you and the planet. So this is a challenge that's open to all ages and all eating styles. And best part is it's free. You can even personalize your approach based on your own comfort level. So maybe you're like, I only want to not eat meat or dairy products or whatever it may be on Mondays and Wednesdays, or, you know, just as an example. You can indicate that when you sign up for our challenge. So we're really trying to encourage you to eat less meat and more plants. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'm going to skip this slide for the sake of time. And my contact info is right here, Robbie Brown. So Robbie.Brown@acterra.org. If you have any questions about what I talked about today, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you. That was very
Of
important.
of course, my pleasure. And